Welcome to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery starring Jerry Springer, along with Gene Galvin and me. I'm Megan Hils. We're recorded live in front of a brilliant studio audience at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky.
My daddy came
Here he
home.
is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jerry Springer.
Oh, my word. Thank you. Thank you.
Jerry.
Oh,
It
wow.
always sounds bigger than probably it really is.
It really is.
Yeah, but I think
magic
the
of
smartest
radio.
thing we did was sell those binoculars so people way in the upper deck
Way back.
Can
still see us.
Feel a part of the...
Would be unfair to them. Hey, by the way, we had Harold Hensley on our show last week from
Yeah.
the Dayton, Ohio area, not too far from Cincinnati.
He was fantastic.
And he was good.
Yeah, he was.
Got a
He
new
was
album
good.
out.
Yep.
We'll hear more about that in a little bit. And we said, come on back. So
Yep.
we got him in for another week.
Yeah.
And he will do another song, join Jerry on Down by the Riverside.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Very good. And also, we're going to ask Jerry to comment on kind of a theme that's been lingering probably since Donald Trump was elected, but America seems so angrily divided,
Yeah.
but angry.
Yeah.
There's a passion that's, love to hear you give some analysis to that. Now, I want to do something that is kind of tough because Megan Hils has been, I'm going to give a little bit of history here if it's okay.
Yeah.
Megan Hils, who is like, we're like her crazy uncles.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
Wait,
they are.
this
and
is-
she always,
This is Megan, right?
Yeah.
yeah, that's
This is
Megan
mine.
on your left, yeah.
Jerk.
And she has been with Jerry and secondarily me through a career in radio, Springer on the Radio, Air America,
Yep.
going back 10 years maybe or more.
2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 and
Well, yeah.
6, yeah.
Yeah.
So she did that. She was on a show with my brother Jerry. My brother Jerry Galvin is in the audience here as we speak. And
Hey,
Jerry?
Jerry, please. Get the spotlight on him.
radio fame himself, and we did a show
Yes.
called It's So Stupid Galvin's Again, a very proud title of a radio show.
Yes.
And
It's So
aptly
Stupid.
named.
Aptly named. And Megan was our announcer and cohort on that as well.
Yep.
So when we decided to do Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery, the Jerry Springer podcast, we asked Megan if she would join us, and she did. And for 3+ years, she has done that. We've always said all throughout, as you know, Megan, that Megan is a professional woman, has a day job, and has a hotshot degree from Xavier University, a master's, his undergraduate from Northern Kentucky University, and then a master's from Xavier that trained her to do HR work.
Yep.
Am I right so far?
So far.
And so she just took a job. I'm not going to name the company. It's not necessary, but it's a wonderful company that's come into the area, the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. And her hours, and this sort of came out of nowhere to us, not to us, we're not complaining, but it was a situation where she's not traveling. That
Not
isn't so much
traveling
the
anymore.
issue.
Yeah.
Because at a former job, she was doing some traveling and was missing some shows, and we had some fill-in people. But this job is, I guess, what you would call a kind of a second shift.
Yeah, it's the later hours. So
It's
I
the
work
later
from
hours.
4 to 3.
Which is the second shift?
4 to 11,
Like, yeah,
would be
like
right?
4
Yeah.
to, yeah, so
That
working
kind of
in
deal.
the evenings.
Because the HR thing in this big company that's come
Yeah,
in,
it's a
they need stuff
24-hour
going.
operation.
Yeah.
Probably
Yep.
going to do some training and things
Exactly.
and orientations.
Right.
Yep.
And there are workers that are working that later.
Round the clock.
Round the clock. Is that true?
It's 24 hours, 7
So
days
it's a
week
3-shift operation.
So
Yep.
where are you going with this?
So she is leaving
What?
our show.
Yeah,
What?
it's my last show.
It's her day. Her day job is calling.
What day job?
What do you mean what day job? It's her career. It's a high-paying
Career
HR
schmaria.
job.
I got to pay bills, Jen.
You said they have different shifts. Get a different shift.
No, it doesn't
You
work
have
like
no
that.
inkling how the world works, do
No,
you?
he doesn't. He doesn't.
Just none.
So entitled.
I know.
But anyway, we are very
man.
sorry for a whole bunch of reasons. You are
litany.
No, you're hilarious. You're the perfect foil for.
Who's going to keep us reined in?
I know. So.
And who's going to laugh at my hysterical jokes?
Well, that's not going to change. No one does.
Well, I guess you got to leave.
God, it was good to see you guys this week. I'm out.
Oh, man.
And I imagine you have mixed feelings too, because
I'm really No, this has been, and the first time around when we did Spring on the Radio, it was such a blast.
Yeah.
And this has been, and being down here at the folk school and getting to know everyone that's been around every week, and David and Jim, it's been such a good group of people and such a wonderful experience, and I'm really, really great. I'm getting a little grateful for it, because not everybody gets to do this stuff and gets to sit here and listen to Jerry. And all joking aside, I mean, you're brilliant, and I love the time that I've been able to learn from you guys. And
well, we love you, and you're going to come back in 10 years. We'll do it again. Or we're going to have to do it at, what is it called, the Springdale Cemetery?
yeah.
St. Charles Nursing Home.
Well, before there'll be a nursing
Instead of
home.
saying live from the Ludlow coffee shop, it'll be dead from Springdale.
The former Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much about what goes on here because it takes some of the magic out of it. But there are some other things you do on the show that we don't say directly. You know what I'm saying, Megan?
Yep, I do.
So you're still going to be doing work
and
for
we
the
can
show.
still have you do some of that stuff.
For sure.
Because that can be done
Behind the curtain.
behind the curtain.
Yeah, no, it
But
has been a blast. I've loved
Anyway,
every second of
we
it.
have
And if
really,
you get fired, you'll be right back
I'll be
here,
right
right?
back.
Yeah.
Oh, hell.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers
Just
crossed.
view it as a month off, Gene.
Yeah. Hey, by the way,
I can't work here. I have to go work for an hour a week for Jerry Springer.
and there are unknowns down the line because shift assignments can change.
Sure,
Oh,
absolutely.
So we don't know.
And, maybe they're paying you something, but then again,
For those listening and not watching on Facebook Live, Jerry, hold on a second. Let me.
you
Jerry,
want to take what's behind curtain 1 or curtain 2?
all right, let me see this for a second. Just put that right there. I won't
Put
tell you.
that right
Just a
there.
wallet.
Jerry, because most people hear this don't see it, but Jerry took out a wallet, and I want to make a reference here. And Megan, this can be one of your parting shots. Do you remember the Seinfeld episode where George had back problems? And Jerry said,
Why do you need a receipt?
"Look at this wallet."
Yeah,
I'm not going
that's
to
not
take anything from it. I'm going to hold this up. Facebook Live people.
looks like
By the way, get out your cell phone too while we're at it. We'll have fun on 2 levels. Okay, this is Jerry's cell phone. Facebook Live for those listening. I'm opening about a vintage '85 flip
Circa
phone.
91.
Here, you can hear me close it. That's Jerry's cell phone.
That's me
Close
hanging
it.
up.
And then this is Jerry's wallet, billfold, whatever you want to call it. That sucker is. Does anybody have a measuring stick here? I bet that sucker's like 3
Well, they make
inches
money
thick.
so much thicker these days.
What in the mother F do you have in here that would make
He's got a coupon for a free ice cream at the
for Facebook
Well,
Live?
Gene.
Yeah, man, are you loaded?
That's svelte. That's svelte.
It is felt.
Hey, there's my
Well, why?
wallet.
Why do
There's
you even
your-
bother carrying it?
Yeah, right.
Bonnie pays for everything.
Okay, here. Let's do one last thing as a send off for Megan. I'm taking the money out of my wallet.
$6.
$6.
$6. That is, you know how they say, well, what do you have in your wallet or some
What's
credit
in
card?
your
Is that-
wallet?
What's in your
$6.
$6.
This is pathetic. Here, go buy yourself a dress.
Notice, I'm taking it.
He's keeping the dollar. $7.
I got $6. Wait,
I
I'm
mean,
not asking how much, but I bet you have in there hundreds. I'm
few.
watching this. Look at these. These are all hundreds. 100.
You're
I'm
gonna
up to
get him
1,000.
robbed walking down the
Holy God. That's 1,000 easily, way north
Get
of
your own
1,000.
show, buddy.
Yeah, right. So,
But all that
Megan,
good wholesome programming gets you.
look what you're going to miss, Megan.
Only in America.
We love you, Megan.
Love you guys.
Yes,
we will
it's
miss
gonna-
you.
we really
and
are.
When holidays come, vacation, whatever. Yeah, like on vacation, you're coming to the Jerry
gonna-
Springer
you know,
podcast.
right?
Yeah, instead of cruising the Mediterranean. Or
Yeah,
something.
I'll be here. Yeah.
But down the line, who knows?
Yeah,
Could be a shift
exactly.
change. In the meantime, we are, we got to consider, we really do love having a third voice.
Yeah.
There will be somebody, and we'll figure all that out.
Yep.
But for the time being, we're just
I'll come back and visit.
very sorry to see Megan go. Megan Hill. Closing comment, by the way. Megan, I've said this before, is in the business world, very proficient person in a complicated world of industry now, doing HR stuff. But she was trained as an actress.
Yeah, that was my undergrad.
And did lots of acting. And so the whole announcing thing and the comedy stuff and all the personality is just part of who
It's
you
all
are.
fake. It's all just an act.
So we're going to see now if we can do a show without personality. This
We're
ought
gonna
to be
try
a
it.
real test.
Put
God,
the flip phone
my
away.
phone back. Thank
Go back. He's got important calls to
In
make on
case
that.
someone calls long distance.
Yeah, like
Is it
1994.
extra if you call
Yeah,
long
from the
distance?
past.
You.
Hey, transferable skills. I'm an educator by trade, and I was always big on that. The skills that you have, that you learned in theater training and all the acting you did and all the personality stuff, all that just transfers over into the business world, particularly if you're a trainer
Oh, yeah. Yep.
or a teacher, which I've done. You've got to have, most successful educators are the ones that are the same people that could be in theater or
That is
You got to make it
lot
interesting.
of
'Cause
stuff.
You get handed some really boring topics. I mean, I was teaching people how to drive forklifts a few weeks ago. Like, that is
Yeah.
not interesting watching 45-minute videos on that.
I hear you. And you've got to come up with ways to sort of bring that alive and to hold people with you, et cetera.
Yep.
So we're very proud of you, and we look
Thanks, Gene.
forward staying in touch.
Two
And
weird uncles.
you'll hear her voice. You'll hear her voice on
It's
this
a real
podcast.
insult to your
I
family,
know
isn't
it is.
it?
They're lovely people.
You'll hear her voice sometimes when you won't even
Yeah.
know it. You know what I'm saying?
No,
Okay. Hey, Jerry, talk to us about, give us your analysis of why are people so pissed off in America these days?
Well, if you're our age, we put it in context because we remember the Vietnam era,
Yep.
where the anger was easily as much and frankly more violent. I mean, in the late '60s, we had burning cities, we had riots, assassinations, people burning draft cards. I mean, it was, that was as rough as I've ever seen in the United States. But the intensity of the feeling now is, people basically stop talking to what used to be their friends, or they just avoid discussing politics at all. I mean, there really is a substantive division in our personal lives, it seems, and it's at a and what brings us to this? I mean, we've had political differences before, but now it seems at a whole new level. Now, in fairness, part of it is it's a different age. So all differences get exacerbated by, for example, social media, cable news 24/7, outside efforts trying to manipulate public opinion, fake websites, stuff like that. And so all of this, adds to the intensity of people's feelings. That's why politics has become such a part of our lives. We almost can't escape it. You can't even watch comedians in late night television without it being in your face all the time. I would argue that one of the reasons that there is such intensity, beyond those, which by themselves would probably be enough, if every poll we take, that anybody takes, for the last generation, it seems, is, how much what do you think of our government? What do you think of the White House? What do you think of Congress? What do you think of the Senate? What do you think of our judicial system? It is amazing. Everything is, in negative numbers. People dislike, don't have respect for our major institutions. They're all disliked. And it's across the board. And a theory I have for why this happens, and it's came to light even more so with these hearings on the Supreme Court justice, it's that we have a government which ostensibly rules over us, And it's not the government we voted for. Everything, we're taking orders in our lives from people that didn't win, from people we didn't vote for. So whether it's, think of it, twice in the last 16 years, we had a president who didn't get the most votes. And in Trump's case, by a lot. And then you have a Congress where overwhelmingly more people voted Democrat in the congressional elections than vote Republican. And yet the Congress is clearly Republican, and that's because of gerrymandering. And then you look at the Senate, which, even though it doesn't get a lot of discussion, I would argue is structurally the most serious problem. Yep. And what I mean by that is every state, as you know, gets 2 senators. So we have 50 states, we have 100 senators. So this afternoon, I Googled the percentage of the population of all 50 states. And I divided the country in half. So the 25 smallest states and the 25 largest states. Both groups have 50 senators, right? Each state gets 2 senators. So the 25 smallest states make up 50 senators. But the 25 smallest states, if you add up their entire population, comes to only 15. That's 1/5% of the nation. Do you understand that? Half the Senate, 50 U.S. senators, come from states that only represent 15% of the country. And these are overwhelmingly, almost all, quote, red states. Rural states, southern states, states, obviously, that don't have a lot of people. And then you wonder why the Senate is conservative. You wonder why we get the votes we do. Why there's very little progress. That's the system. Now, initially it was put in because that's the only way you'd get the smallest states to ratify the Constitution. But that was when we had 13 colonies. Now, and we're stuck with it because it's in the Constitution, but we have a Senate which in no way reflects the American population. So with all the complaining about how can Trump be president when he lost to Hillary by 3 million votes, how the heck do we get anything past the Senate of any progressiveness when you have 50 of the senators representing 15% of the population? And I'm yelling this because, honestly, with all my studying of politics, I kind of knew it was unbalanced, and I added it up again. You can look it up yourself. I think to be exactly technical, it was 15.4%. That's unbelievable. So you wonder why people have not much confidence in our government is because you have all these institutions, the presidency, the Congress because of gerrymandering, and the Senate because of the way it's structured, that we have a government that isn't the government we voted for. And then we wonder why we get upset, why we have no faith in it, why it just doesn't do anything for us. No, because they're not elected by us. So how do the Republicans do so well, though? In power, in getting power. They don't do well in convincing most American people to vote for them because, let's be honest, most American people aren't old white men like Gene and me. So they know how to get power. And one of the reasons they have power is because all our institutions are male-dominated throughout history. So they still control the institutions. And that's why you get a committee on the Senate hearings on Kavanaugh being drilled by all these old white men. Not one woman on the Republican side. Now, how do they get this power other than the fact that they've always had they always have run these institutions? I think, and this is where Trump's people are really smart, and honestly, I just thought about it 2 days ago because that's when now 2 days ago, based on when we're recording this, which is the 9th of October. They are replaying, Trump has stolen Richard Nixon's playbook. Let me explain how it's done. In the early 60s, well, starting in the late 50s and early 60s, we had the Civil Rights Movement. And the Civil Rights Movement, when Americans, starting in 1959, most Americans had television sets. That was the first year most Americans had television sets, 59. And we started to see on the nightly news, and there were only, in the beginning, 2 and then 3 stations that had news, we would always see these pictures of what was going on in the South, of Bull Connors, the sheriff, hosing down little black children that wanted to get into school, or the Freedom Rides, and we've had them here, some of the survivors of the Freedom Rides on our podcast here. We also had the bombing of the church in Birmingham, the march in Selma. So in the late 50s and early 60s, America's conscience was hit by looking at these pictures. So even if you were conservative, even if you never gave much thought to what was going on in the South or whatever, you couldn't help but see, that's really bad, that's wrong. And so the Civil Rights Movement was, in a sense, romanticized, and a lot of people joined in. If they didn't join in, they certainly understood. And the music of the era became civil rights music, Dylan and Peter, Paul and Mary and what have you. So that was that. And then suddenly, in the mid-60s, things started getting ugly. Because all of a sudden, the emphasis was on Vietnam, and suddenly there was not much progress on civil rights. And so the black movement, the African-American movement, became more militant. And even Martin Luther King was kind of disparaged within the black community as being too soft. That his nonviolent approach wasn't working, and Stokely Carmichael and people of that ilk started getting more power. And so you had the Black Power movement, and you had the militancy, and you had burning cities and riots. And here comes Richard Nixon, running in 1968, starting actually in 64 with Goldwater. But here comes Nixon, and they pushed, in a sense, by Wallace and the fear that George Wallace would get the nomination, the Southern strategy. And the Southern strategy was they could take the Democrats away from the Democratic Party and come to the Republican Party, if Nixon thought, if he appeals to the, quote, silent Americans, the silent majority, the white people in working class families that were suddenly afraid of militant blacks. They were suddenly afraid, they're moving into our neighborhood. If you drive through the neighborhood, lock the doors on your car. Don't let the women walk there at night. And all these scary things were brought out to get people very quietly to go to the voting booth. And they maybe had always voted Democrat, but because of their fear of what these young blacks were doing and where this movement was going, these crazy people, these hippies, etc., be afraid. So without telling anyone, let's go to the polls and quietly vote for Nixon. It became the Southern strategy, and for the first time since the Civil War, the Republican Party won the South and even started to make inroads in the Rust Belt. The fear of the minorities. Now jump 50 years later. Did you notice, and that's what came blaring through the screen at me on Sunday when I was watching the talk shows. They're all using the same words now. The women's movement, the mob. Did you notice how not just Trump, but McConnell and Lindsey Graham, they used the exact same word. These these, I'm all for women, but these women are crazy. They are threatening us. It's a mob. Did you see how they ran onto the elevator? Did you see how they're coming into the Capitol? How they're coming into our neighborhoods? They're crazy. They're the mob. Because he's not going to win a majority of the people with this, but if they can get their base, just like they got the base with the Southern strategy to quietly come and vote Republican, they can get their base this time, a month and a half from now, in the November election, to come on home and vote Republican. You don't have to tell your neighbors you're voting for Trump, but quietly, because women are starting to threaten the men. You actually heard the president says, "I fear for my sons." What? But that's what they're saying. They're using that term. That is not an accident. You don't get 3 politicians on national television the same morning to all use the term mob. You know a memo went out or an email went out. You know it. And that is the Nixon strategy. Fear. Because nothing drives people to the polls more than fear. You can like someone, but that isn't going to make you change your habits on election day and get up in the morning and go and vote. Yeah, I like him, good person, whatever. Fear, whoa, I got to get to the polls. I'm afraid. And even on local issues, if they're going to build a shopping center across the street from you and you don't want that shopping center because of traffic and everything, you will vote that day. You're afraid of the shopping center. You're not going to say, well, I'm going to vote for that guy. I saw a picture with his family. It's really nice. He went to my high school. That doesn't drive you to the polls. Fear drives you to the polls. That's what they're doing. That's what Trump, McConnell, and Lindsey Graham are doing. Did you see him screaming at the hearings? He's striking fear into their base. That will get them out, and that is why, ladies and gentlemen, the only way we're going to stop this is if every one of us gets to the polls on Election Day. I can't say it enough. It is the only thing left to stop. The Supreme Court won't save us. The Senate won't save us. The Congress won't save us. The President won't save us. You want to save yourself? Get to the polls in November.
So if you haven't done so, just have you seen the documentary Get Me, Roger Stone? Have you watched that on Netflix?
No, not yet.
Oh
No.
my gosh.
Should see it?
Holy cow.
Oh, I will.
Especially
Get me
after
one.
just what you
Got
said.
it.
Yeah,
Got
wonderful. All right, as Gene said at the top of our show, Harold Hensley is back with us this evening. Welcome back, Harold.
Thanks for having me back.
All right, so you are back with us for another week. Thank you
Thanks for
very
having me
much.
back.
You're out of
Appreciate
Dayton, Ohio. So what brings you down to the Cincinnati area, northern Kentucky
Actually,
area?
I play some shows down here pretty often with my band, the Repeating Arms,
Cool.
a string band from Dayton. We play Arnold's. It's
Love
our favorite
Arnold's.
patio.
Great place.
Favorite patio to play. And there's a few record stores I hit up here quite a bit, like Everybody's and Shaker Records. So
Very cool.
yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you back. Your newest, well, you said it was your first solo recording. Give us the name of that again.
Midnight Savings Time.
Midnight Savings Time. So you can find this on megaphonerecords.com. You can find more information. Isn't that great? And let's see here, Harold. What song do you have for us tonight?
I'm gonna play a song called "Songs of Home."
Songs of Home.
It was written about a farm that my parents owned, my family owned, in Martha, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Little speck on a map in eastern Kentucky, and it's self-explanatory. The Songs of Home. So
Can't wait to hear it.
You like it? Well, the nights are getting cold, and I dream of my Kentucky home. Well, Mama's in the kitchen, she's a cooking from her soul. his chair, he's a sitting all alone, where he watches that old road and hopes that his boy will come home, where we sing the songs of home, the place that's not forgotten even when you're dead and gone, where we sing the songs of home. You can tell summertime's coming by the dead snakes on the road. Well, the farm is being sold, and I think of the things I owe to those foothills and muddy roads, where we sing the songs of home, where we sing songs of home, the place that's not forgotten even when you're dead and gone, where we sing songs of home. You can tell summertime's coming by the dead snakes on the road.
Again, that is Harold Hensley, and you can check him out at megaphonerecords.com. His album is called Midnight Savings Time, and we are going to ask him again to sing with Mr. Springer.
It'd be my pleasure.
And we apologize in advance.
You weren't discouraged last time?
No, it was a great time.
What's wrong with you?
That's the whole reason I came down.
It's a brave man.
Y'all ready?
Yes.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
Gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more.
Get it, Jer.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I ain't gonna study war no more. 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 Woo-hoo. Y'all come back now, you hear?